Hey guys, welcome back to another video. As a few of you might have noticed, I've been away from YouTube and all my socials for quite some time. The main reason for this is that I've moved to a new location and as a result had to move all my equipment, and in order to get it set up in a way that's productive to create content, I've had to build this workshop that I'm currently filming in. During the build process of the workshop I did take a lot of photos, unfortunately not much video just because I wasn't really in a place to film. My equipment was scattered everywhere and it just wasn't feasible, but I did take a lot of photos. So what I'll do in this video is walk you through that journey of building the workshop, and hopefully, you know, if some of you out there have got similar ideas, you can take some inspiration from it, or if you've got any ideas for me to improve it and add to this workshop, that's great, I'm all for that as well. So let's jump into it and I'll show you what I've been up to for the past few months. To house my workshop, I decided to buy and install this 15 by 10 foot Forest Garden Apex shed. These are not the highest quality sheds out there, but I had mine at a 25% friends and family discount, so this was a no-brainer for me. I did initially do quite a lot of research as to whether it would be more cost effective to design and build my own from scratch, but honestly, with the price of timber here in the UK at the moment, it just really wasn't worth it. Another benefit to these semi-assembled type of sheds is that they can be moved and installed elsewhere relatively easily. That's of interest to me as well because I'm currently living in a rented property and I know for a fact that one day I will be moving the shed to another location, so it's at least nice to have that option. So this project was a pretty big undertaking since part of the garden required some groundwork for the shed to be installed. This area in the photo was a bit of a dead zone in the garden, so it made sense to put the shed there. I wanted to install the shed properly on level ground with drainage, which ultimately meant that the area would need to be dug out and have a retaining wall built around the edge. So I started digging. The total digging area was 13 foot by 15 foot, and my goal from the start was to dig out roughly 1 feet of length per day, which equated to around 3/4 of a cubic meter per day. This meant that the entire dig took just over 2 weeks with a few days off here and there. The dry spell and heat wave here in the UK this year made digging a little bit tougher, but I got on with it, and as you can see, I made some great progress. The classic British weather decided to make a return before I finished digging, and after such a dry spell we had a massive downpour, which of course, with the ground being so dry, caused flooding pretty much everywhere. This really made the last part of the dig extra difficult because when you're digging 2 foot deep, you're really dealing with clay and horrible mud, so it was time to get the wellies out. Next up, I had to dig some footings for the small retaining wall. The footings were 1 foot wide and 1 foot deep. This was more than sufficient for such a low garden wall. Again, that was around a week's worth of digging, while also facing challenges from the weather. I tried my best to protect it with a tarpaulin, but due to the extreme rain, the footings just filled up with water multiple times. And in the end, I had to buy a dirty water pump that cleared all that water out in around 30 minutes. To do this groundwork, I ordered 100 concrete blocks, 1 dumpy of sand, 1 dumpy of premixed concrete ballast, and 3 dumpy bags of 20mm aggregate. I had 1 solid day of dry weather, so I took advantage of that opportunity to mix and pour the wall footings. Cement mixers these days cost a lot of money, and unless you're a tradesman it's not really worth owning one. So I hired a mixer for a week, which only cost me around £70. That included delivery and pickup, so not bad. My mix was 6 parts premixed ballast and 1 part cement, which was perfect for what I needed, and using a mixer on my own, I managed to get that all done in just a few hours. I then started building the wall, and for this I decided to put up another tarpaulin. This served me well as I was able to keep the brickwork dry and continue working regardless of the weather. I also added some PVC pipe on the second layer of the blocks, which allowed for drainage from behind the wall. After completing the blockwork, I rendered the wall and put down the aggregate on top of membrane sheet. The aggregate is important for under the shed because it allows for drainage and prevents standing surface water below the shed. In regard to the shed itself, it was delivered within around 3 weeks of ordering. Before assembly, I painted everything with 3 coats of Ronseal 10-year wood stain. I did also paint the underneath of the floor and gave it 1 coat of a 5:1 PVA mix for additional water resistance. In addition to the concrete runners, I decided to build a timber frame for the shed to sit on. This provided additional support for the floor, given that it's quite a large shed. I then assembled the floor panels and screwed them together from underneath. It could then be flipped over and I could then have the two halves fixed together also. From here it was pretty much a case of just assembling the side panels and the roof. The shed wasn't too complicated to put together because the instructions were very clear. It was challenging at times to keep everything perfectly square because these sheds are essentially just feather edge panels and no two panels are ever quite the same. That being said, they do go together with some persuasion and I was very happy with the outcome. With my shed fully assembled, the next task was to insulate the whole thing to improve the temperature during both winter and summer, and also to reduce condensation where possible. To do this, I used a brand of insulation called SuperFoil. This stuff is relatively low cost and has good performance. The gaps between each of the panels can then be sealed up using aluminium insulation tape. I also decided to put a layer of insulation on the floor since I plan to add additional interior walls and floors to the shed. To create that interior, I decided to use OSB. It's great stuff, easy to cut, and it's pretty cheap. I ordered 18 of these 8-foot by 4-foot boards. I was very efficient with my cuts and I ended up having 3 to spare. The spare boards proved to be very useful later on for creating storage and worktops for my equipment. I bought a few workbench brackets, each rated at 100 kilograms and 200 kilograms as a pair. This is more than sufficient for these benches as they won't be used to store anything heavy. It's just more of a workspace for projects and videos. The next important thing was to supply electricity to the shed. To do this, I laid an armoured cable running from the house which goes underground and comes up underneath the shed. While I was at it, I also laid an Ethernet cable so that I have a solid internet connection in the shed. Until I had actually installed a consumer unit in there, I created a temporary 13 amp extension lead through the armoured cable, which was perfect for supplying lighting and powering my tools. When the time was right, I decided to install a 40 amp RCD consumer unit and configured a ring circuit consisting of 12 double sockets through PVC conduit. This ran around the edge of the shed, through some trunking, over the door and back to the unit. It's still early days and the shed isn't quite finished. I've started setting up a few things in the shed, as you can see. I'm now able to make videos again, but if you're interested in a sort of shed tour video, let me know and I'll create one of them in a couple of weeks. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, a bit of a different video, but nevertheless it is part of the channel and part of the journey, so I thought I'd upload it anyway. Let me know if you've got any questions or if you've got a suggestion for me. I'll answer them down in the comments below. Thank you to everybody who stuck around and was patient. I know I was away for quite a while, but truthfully I'd rather put out no content than put out poor content. So now I'm in a great place where I can create great quality content more often and ultimately the viewers will benefit from it. So once again, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in another video.